Some ANC members around the country are up in arms over the candidate selection process ahead of the municipal polls. In KZN, for instance, the Youth League there has been picketing at the provincial headquarters against the inclusion or exclusion, rather, of young candidates. In the Tshwane inner city, a dispute has arisen over a candidate who members say bullied her way to the top of that list. Let's get your perspective on one part of that story. Bring in Rabatho Selepe, who's the ANC Branch Executive Member of Tshwane's Inner City Ward 80, and he joins us via our video link this morning. It's great to have you on the program, Rabatho. Thanks very much indeed for making time. Part of the information at my disposal shows that you say the process itself around the candidate lists has been thuggish. What do you mean by that?
Thuggish in that a particular councillor candidate has strong-armed ANC processes. She literally manned every single aspect of the public participation or the public votes with thugs. The constituency within that community has been threatened continually, even before a year into the build-up of the elections, being told if they do not toe the line by voting for this particular individual, that they will stand to rue it after the elections.
You say, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so those are some of the things that have been happening in our community here and within the ward of John Muller, Ward 80, rather.
You say this particular individual, and I don't want to necessarily push you to say who they are for obvious reasons, but you say this individual used her position and influence to essentially steal the nomination. Can you give us examples of how she did this?
Well, essentially there's a network of collusion within with individual leaders at regional level and quite possibly even a provincial level. So they come into this ANC exercises which speak to getting the best ANC candidate to represent the ward, and they just rig the ballot. Like, for instance, they took the ballot and ran with it and went missing for 4 hours with 128 ballot papers unaccounted for, which were subsequently, 52 of them were recovered, 51 of them were for a particular, another a councillor candidate, and one one other candidate as well. So there were 7 candidates on the day.
It was the Secretary General, the Deputy Secretary General of the organization, Jesse Duarte, who essentially mentioned that the selection of prospective candidates will be through a rigorous community-based selection process. In other words, ordinary community members will be able to decide on who makes it onto this list. The sense I'm getting from you is that that's just lip service, really. It doesn't necessarily translate on the ground, at least in your ward.
Well, ideally it should translate, and there are cadres within the movement who look to toe the line and really keep the sanctity of ANC processes intact. But unfortunately, there are checks and balances that were perhaps unaccounted for, and realities are that this is not an exercise that is participated by just rank and file members of the ANC and members of society only as well. It has found the interest of unscrupulous individuals who have also co-opted what we would have thought were principled cadres, tried and tested, who we've known for years, who have also come under the influence of these nefarious developments.
Sure.
And influences, yeah.
Given that, do you reckon people who share the position that you hold are unlikely to support the ANC at the polls? I mean, how do you back candidates, as you put it, who essentially got there in unscrupulous ways, even though you're part of the ANC?
Well, majority of the BEC is united in in trying to maintain the dignity of the movement. We wholeheartedly, at every material opportunity, have beseeched the ANC to intervene at various levels, so far as national, and we have not lost hope. And we believe that the dispute mechanism of the African National Congress will bear fruit, because we have no other option, and we don't believe it's lip service. We have seen actionable responses that have emanated from the various levels of the ANC, especially from the likes of Comrade Bulemabe, Comrade Mbalula, and also the DSG, Jesse Duarte, who we were able to even speak to telephonically with her, you know, and our disputes have been satisfactorily resolved, and those that are outstanding are still being resolved. And we believe that by the 1st of November, individuals that are perpetrating these actions against the ANC and against society itself will be brought to justice, as a matter of fact. So our support for the ANC is unrelenting, as long as they deliver to the prescripts of the principles of the organization. Then we have no qualms in supporting the ANC and encouraging society to continue to support the ANC.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not really delivering to the prescripts of the organization, even when it comes to honoring internal processes, at least if what you're saying is anything to go by. To be honest with you, Rabatho, you sound to me like someone who's incredibly disillusioned by the way things have fared so far. What happens when this dispute resolution doesn't bear the outcome that you're hoping for, especially considering that the lists are in and they are locked? In many ways, I'm even trying to figure out what kind of resolution really can come out of something like this. The horse, in many respects, is already bolted.
Well, so far as the candidates list is concerned, I haven't seen it, so I can't speculate. For us, it's not really about who's on the ballot. We are still members of the ANC. We believe in the mechanisms and the checks and balances that are instated by the PLC and the electoral committees. Aside from that, even if a undesirable individual does happen to make it through, we believe that the IEC as well has its processes to keep not just the ANC but all political parties in check. We can't have an individual with multiple criminal records emerging to the seat, public seat. It's inconceivable, essentially, and I wouldn't say I'm disillusioned. If anything, I am steadfast and pretty focused on ensuring that the best candidate for the African National Congress in my ward. And last time we were at Luthuli House, and we saw a multitude of branches from across the country. And if anything, that event, we came back to our branch with a greater appreciation for the struggles of rank and file members of the ANC, and that created an even greater unity and even greater impetus for us to come back into our community and continue fighting.
Very quickly.
From that,
sorry, I got your point. Very quickly, Rabatho, if you haven't seen the final list, how do you know that there are members who are using their influence to get onto it, or who are on it?
Because of the previous list that was deposited to the ANC. Well, that was allegedly deposited to the ANC, to the IEC rather.
Okay, so even you're not quite sure if that's the final list, really?
Yeah, no.
Okay, that's important for our viewers. Let's continue this discussion with Sibonelo Nomvalo, who's the spokesperson of the ANC Youth League in KZN. Sibonelo, you're joining us via our video link too. Thanks so much for making time. We're ventilating some of the issues around who gets to make it onto this list. And what the ANC Youth League in KZN is essentially saying is that not enough young people, as far as you're concerned, are on the list for those communities. What kind of lobbying took place to really try fix that, if any, from your organization? Sibonelo, are you able to hear us?
Good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to the viewers at home. As the ANC Youth League of KwaZulu-Natal, we've been marching to the provincial offices of the ANC Youth League for the past 2 days, of the ANC, in the province of KwaZulu-Natal for the past 2 days. Our march follows an assessment that we made on the list for the local government elections, wherein we made a determination that there is no 25% youth representation in all the lists in KwaZulu-Natal. We're having 11 regions in KwaZulu-Natal. We analyzed all municipalities in those regions and came to a conclusion that young people have been seriously compromised, and we said that cannot happen under our watch. We attempted, though, before marching to the ANC office, to have some meetings with the ANC leadership with no success. Hence, we resorted to march to ANC because we were demanding their attention.
Yeah, and so you say there's been no response from the mother body, essentially, from the concerns that you've raised?
No, for the concerns that we raised, there has been no response. We wanted a meeting initially, and through the coordinator, who is the acting provincial secretary of the ANC Youth League. So the response that he kept on getting was that the leadership is going to meet us soon, up until we realized that, no, man, time is not on our side.
Yep.
And the only thing that we are left with now is to go straight to the provincial office to demand attention.
The reality, Sibonelo, is that this is not the first time this has happened. In fact, I remember often when there are issues to do with candidate lists, it's the ANC Youth League complaining about the lack of representation, specifically of young people. What do you reckon underpins this, especially for the ANC?
Now, remember, before, the decision rested on the discretion of the leadership to include young people. But now it's no longer the case now, because it's part of the policy of the ANC and it's part of the guidelines. So it's unlike before, where we had to make the leadership to understand. Now, the leadership, whether they do understand or not, they have to comply with the policy and also with the guidelines. Hence, we were strong when we were saying that the 25% provision is non-negotiable. The only thing that we can negotiate for is something which is beyond 25%.
Sure. All right. Well, thanks for your take. Really do appreciate it. That there is Sibonelo Nomvalo, who's a spokesperson for the ANC Youth League in KZN. Also joining that discussion was Rabatho Selepe, an ANC Branch Executive Member for Tshwane's Inner City Ward 80. Just two stakeholders, for lack of a better term, who are not happy with the candidate list submitted by the ANC in their current form. In one instance, we're told that the national leadership has been engaged and they trust that that process will lead to a favorable outcome. But in KZN, you just heard there, Sibonelo saying that they are yet to receive any kind of result. We'll also try and reach the spokesperson, at least for the ANC nationally, get you a sense of what they know, and more importantly, what they're going to do about this. But to both our guests for now, thanks very much indeed.